Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining today's webinar. I'm just going to give it a couple more moments just to let everybody come through the doors. You guys are obviously the very punctual ones, there's the attendees that we like, but just going to give them a couple moments just for everybody else to kind of to catch up. Alex, I assume you can hear me and you can see the slides all okay?
Yeah, all good on my side. Morning all. As John says, we'll give you a few moments to get settled in.
And guys, if you could just pop in the chat box, make sure that just let us know that you can hear us as well. Just put a yes in the chat box. That's always helpful for us, just to give us that extra little bit of reassurance that that everything's working okay from a technical perspective. So Alex, we've got good numbers for today's session. So yeah, I think what we should do, we should just kind of get started now. Excellent. Cool. Okay. Well, welcome everybody to today's webinar. Obviously, this session is titled "What's the point of a brand and how to create one for your firm?" So, I suppose Alex and I will be discussing why a brand is important for your firm and how you should consider a brand and how to use this to differentiate yourself in today's markets. Before we get started, I just wanted to say that this webinar is being recorded and we will send everybody an email later today with a link to the recording as well as a copy of the presentation slides. Just before we get started, I wanted to briefly introduce Bright. Bright is the home of multi-award-winning payroll, accounting, practice management and tax software. I'll give you a very short introduction to each of the Bright products, starting with Accountancy Manager, which is cloud-based practice management software designed to lighten your workloads by automating the admin associated with running an accountancy or bookkeeping business. BrightPay is payroll software that makes managing your payroll quick and easy. It's currently desktop-based, but we intend on launching a fully cloud version later this year. And Surf Accounts is a cloud accounts production software with a bookkeeping modular, Surf Accounts. Surf is currently only available in Ireland, but you can register your interest for when we launch in the UK. And BTC Software is the latest into the Bright group and is tax software expert with accounts, production, corporation tax and self-assessment tax return modules. As a bit of an introduction as to who we are and why we're talking to you guys today, I'm Jonathan Stobart, I'm the one on the right, and I'm our Events and Partnership Manager here at Bright. I joined Bright last year when the acquisition of Accountancy Manager was made, and where I was the head of marketing for AM. And prior to joining AM, I was a marketing manager for a regional firm based in the Midlands for 9 years. During that process, we rebranded the practice, and it was a huge exercise, but which had absolutely massive impact on the business and our positioning, and that's the sort of thing I want to talk to you about today. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, that must mean I'm the one on the left. I'm Alex Troy. I'm Bright's brand manager. I came in with BTC Software. I was in the marketing team and ended up heading that function up for the last 3 years, joined in 2019. So I've come in with the dreaded Making Tax Digital project kind of as that went live for VAT. At Bright, my mission is really to make sure that when an accountant in the UK or in Ireland has a need for software, essentially they think of Bright and come to us first. It's making that presence known in the world, what we're about, why we do it and how we can help.
Cool, thank you very much, Alex. So I just wanted to briefly outline the learning objectives for today's session. And as you can see in front of you, we're going to be talking a lot about brands today. We're going to be talking a lot about positioning your firm and your brands inside the market, how to create it, what the impact is going to be on the business, on your clients, on employees if you've got them. And we're also going to touch on the process, and we're going to look at like I say, my insight from doing it within the practice, Alex's insight from all the businesses that it's going to help. So we're going to run through a bit of a case study scenario with you guys today, and ultimately, we want to talk about what you're going to take away from such an exercise. And for me, it's all about the mission statement, the brand values. That really is the real value in a company's brand, much more than that of just the logo and the colours, for instance, which sometimes we often think about when we think about branding. I want to finish up with a Q&A session as well. So if there's any questions that you've got for Alex and I, feel free to drop them into the Q&A box that you should have on the control panel now, and we'll pick them up at the Q&A session later on during this session. As I say, we will finish up with a Q&A, but if you have any questions at any point, drop into the Q&A box. And as we've mentioned, the webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive an email later today with a link to the recording. So if for whatever reason you need to drop off at any point during the session, feel free to do so, and you'll still be able to catch up at a later time. So what is a brand? Alex, I think you're going to lead us through this first section.
Yeah, absolutely. We've titled it "What is a brand?" but is the more relevant question kind of the title ever? What is the point of a brand? Why do we care? Effectively, your brand is just how people talk about you when you're not in the room, and it goes the same for your business. So when you signed up for this webinar, you would have read a very short scenario, and I posed you a question, which was, if you were to set up a friend on a blind date with a colleague, how confident would you be that you knew exactly how they'd talk about you? And the thing is, none of us are actually perfect, and maybe you've been on a couple of nights out with one of them, but you don't need your friend telling your colleague about that. If your personal brand shines a light on something like, say, work with a local charity, then you'll probably be quite happy that your friend and your colleague are both saying good things about you. And that's kind of what we're talking about when it comes to your business brand as well. It's not about pretty pictures and clever words, which is kind of what that mountain is showing you there. It's about consistently presenting to the world all the cool things about who you are, what you stand for, and why you do it. And that's built on your mission, your values, your position, your identity, and purpose. Branding basically should create empathy, loyalty, and visibility. And it means that if you're doing it right, then your current clients should want to refer you. And when new clients come to you, they should already be thinking about signing up before they even kind of send that first inquiry. You'll see in the mountain there, it's kind of stacked. So you'll often see this in branding as an iceberg, but I definitely prefer it as a mountain because you have to get up the first bit before you get onto the second bit and into the third bit. It's a really common error, like whether you're a startup creating a new brand or if you're an established business looking for that, like, why should we rebrand piece? The error is if you set your sights on the outcome and work backwards. So I would say that the best thing to do is just keep your mind open to the possibilities and don't look at that flag on top. Don't look at the logo and the creative imagery side until you've climbed the base of your mountain, which is kind of what we're going to talk through mainly in this session. But certainly just keep in mind that this should all be based in the authenticity and who you are. The idea is to build the empathy.
And Alex, I do the case studies for Bright and historically for Accountancy Manager, and when I'll be having these sort of conversations with our users, naturally, just because it's my interest, it's my passion, the conversation would always turn to marketing and branding, and it become very apparent to me that almost people would approach marketing and branding as this mountain, but they'd start
Absolutely.
from the top down.
Yeah, and you can't climb a mountain from the top down.
No, absolutely, and people like to start with the name and the logo. I think that's the exciting bit, and when you're getting started, I suppose some of the other more fundamental core elements, such as the mission and vision and the values that we're going to come on to, that almost becomes apparent over time. And I think sometimes a brand it does take time to develop, just like as an individual, you take time to, I suppose, establish who you are before you know who you can portray yourself as. And
exactly.
With that in mind, we wanted just to pose a quick poll to the audience, saying, thinking of your brands and looking at what's in front of you at the moment, does your brand accurately represent you and your firm? So I'm just going to launch this poll now. So just hit yes or no and just hit submit. It'd be interesting to see see how people are evaluating their own brand at the moment, and just looking at some of the answers that are coming in at the moment. The majority are saying that their brands don't reflect the firms that they actually are, which is quite interesting. And I hope by the time that we get to close today,
we've definitely got people in the right place then.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so it's leveling out a little bit. Just going to give this a couple more moments just to finish off.
I think the thing about visuals as well is it's okay to have a preference. It's okay to kind of know what you want your name to be. It's more about having that open mind. So as you go through the process, if things change, you're not completely wedded to the first idea you have.
Okay, I'm just going to close that poll now. It's actually quite interesting. Although it started that most people were, I suppose, erring on the side of the brand didn't represent it. It ends up being almost 50-50, which I think is quite interesting. So I suppose looking at why do we need a brand? When we're talking about branding, as I say, it's quite common that people jump straight to the logo of the company and they think about the colours that company is using to portray themselves. But I really do genuinely believe that if you think of as branding as a presence, the logo is just the bow on top. The brand colours and the company font would be like the wrapping paper, if you will. But ultimately, it's the item in the box that's of real value, and that's the critical bit. And then by understanding what you want to give to people, then you'll be able to understand your full branding and all the other elements such as the logo, the colours, the names. All that will kind of fall into place. And it's quite typical, and we hear it quite a lot, that when firms are starting up, they might just instruct like an online designer to produce a logo for them. And we're not here to criticise anybody's approach, but I'm hopeful that by the end of what we spoke about today, you might have a little bit more insight and a better understanding of how to go through a branding process. So you have a better understanding about how you want your brand to be perceived within the market. And maybe when you're having those sorts of conversations with designers going forward, you might be able to give them a little bit more of a comprehensive brief, really, as to what you want to, how you want to be positioning the company. Again, when I was in practice, yes, the logo and the colours are paramount throughout everything that we always used to portray ourselves with, but it was the combination of everything. So for potential client meetings, we always wanted people to come into the office. We had very nice offices, and that was all part of the branding. We wanted people to come in, sit down in nice offices, see the very professional, the nicely designed marketing material, business cards, even the letterhead that we used, presentations that we used to give to them to be able to pitch our services, the proposal documents, the whole combination of everything. It's building a perception of quality in that prospect's mind. Whereas ultimately, when we then going to give them the proposal, that they know, oh, okay, this is a high quality firm. This is what I expected, and that's why they're perhaps charging that fee. And there's different brand positions within the market as well. You could have not a lower quality brand, but a different position within the market to be able to portray yourself to maybe a smaller section of the market or a larger section of the market, whatever is appropriate for your business strategy.
So when we're going to talk about identity and purpose, I'm sat here at the moment in a very cold room, and I'm looking at my thermos, which says Genuine Thermos brand, and it's that thing. I just noticed it as you were talking, John. I thought I'd just mention it because you look at a flask and you think, oh, that's a thermos. You don't think that's a flask. I thought I'd just throw that one in there as I'm looking at it. When we talk about identity and purpose, your brand should kind of always be pinned on your reason. That's the why, the foundation of everything else. And when I say your reason, I kind of mean the bedrock of your authenticity. So when we're talking about that mountain, this is kind of your base layer. This is your first step. Good branding just requires consistency. If you think about like a toddler and you catch a toddler in a bit of a lie, and that kind of panic look that they get when they realize that they can't quite keep that story straight, and that's because it's not based in the truth. Consistency, therefore, is kind of the key thing, which is, you'll start by telling your story. That would be my advice, tell people your story, tell people why you've gotten into it. what I can't do is consult with everyone on this call individually. So we're going to use a little bit of a case study, one that I've kind of made up as we go. This is Lily, and we're going to imagine that Lily has approached me to help her to create a brand for her new business. So I've asked her to tell me why she's decided to go it alone and start her own accounting firm. And she tells me that she grew up in a rural farming community and she comes from a long line of farmers. And as a kid, her eggs came for breakfast came fresh, like from the coop at the end of the garden. And, her memories are filled with endless summers, and she was wandering open fields, and it's all wonderful. She'd look for the best blackberries, and she'd bring them home and make them into jam and take them to school. We've got this really idyllic kind of like glowing childhood memory. Lily tells me that when she was 18, she headed up to London for university. She wanted to kind of see more of the world. She loved the city, and she took a junior position. And she worked hard to progress her career. Something was missing, and one Saturday she woke up in the late morning. It had been a really long week, and she was feeling a bit dissatisfied. She goes to get an egg from the fridge, and she suddenly realizes that in her childhood, her mum was always stressed. Maybe there weren't, jam available. Maybe there weren't jam jars because it was, financially difficult, or maybe she couldn't go on that school trip. And she remembers like her dad's stress over the financial stress of he wants to run his farm, but he's got to think about the money. So that's when she kind of decides that actually this is what she wants to do. She's gained a lot of skills. She's worked with a really prestigious firm, so she knows her stuff as an accountant. And she decides to go back and start creating her practice around specializing in agriculture. So that's kind of her brand and her brand identity. That's where that's all born. It's all linked to her own story. So my job, if I was consulting with Lily, would be to take that story. And you're probably thinking it's a really homely story. It doesn't sound like a business story. But the job of the brand is to actually create something that can be scaled up with her business. So if we're looking 10 years forward and she's got 30 people working for her, the question here is how do her clients still know that her roots are so close to theirs? So John, I think you did something around this with your rebranding, didn't you?
Exactly. So I mentioned earlier that I was a marketing manager for a large regional firm, and during that time we undertook a rebranding exercise. The results of the project impacted every area of the practice in regards to strategy, recruitment, pricing. It really did change the business. But more on the outputs later on. Firstly, I wanted to kind of take you through the process about starting and why we felt it was the right time to review our branding. So I joined the practice in 2011, and by that point, the company name had already been selected, and that was Prime. It'd been going since 2007, and in 2007 there was a merger between two firms with very traditional names. And they wanted a new, fresh brand, new, fresh name to be able to go forward with. Prime was decided upon, and the new website was launched. By 2011, our USP was cloud accounting. It's hard to imagine now, but when you look back only to 2011, Xero, QuickBooks, FreeAgent, they weren't the brands they were today, and we became an early adopter of the solutions, and we were able to position ourselves as a digital firm, and that was our USP that we really ran with for quite some time, really. I was always really proud and really impressed with some of the great work that we did for clients, and we utilised a range of different solutions to be able to develop solutions for clients. That they impressed me. The clients loved it, and I thought we was doing really, really clever work. But you would never know that was going on by looking at our website, looking at our logo. We were representing ourselves as quite a traditional firm. We still had we wanted to pay homage to I suppose the history of the business, well, the businesses, the combination of the two, but you would perceive us to be just like the other the local competitors, just like every other accountants that was trading at the time, and we were trying to say to people, actually, we're doing something different. We're cutting edge here, and that was when we started to think, well, actually, we're not portraying ourselves as the business that we think we are. I suppose that the final straw really that broke the camel's back was that we wanted a new website. This is when Google had updated one of their algorithm updates, and they were going to start penalising websites that were mobile website friendly. So that was where we was in a position where we need to invest in a new website, but we're not going to invest into a new website until we're happy with branding. And because ultimately the website, although it is a huge one, it is just one piece of marketing material. And I suppose that was what we were in for. Okay, let's take this opportunity to kind of refresh the business, do a rebrand, and have a look and portray ourselves as the business we are today, but the business that we want to also be in 10 years' time.
It's really interesting how you talk about it, because the story there is one of like looking forward, I guess, and being excited by technology and all the good things technology can do for accountants and their clients and as a practice. So the branding had to kind of reflect that and not the traditional kind of more, I guess, the things that bring to mind shoebox clients.
Absolutely. Sorry, I was just going to expand on it as well, because at the time we saw lots of trends with marketing that accountancy firms were doing. Now, when I joined, we were a marketing department, if you will. We were 2 people, but that was quite quite heavy investment for a firm of our size in our position within the market. A lot of firms may have had a marketing manager at this point, so it's some of the larger regional ones, or more commonly, it was somebody within the firm was going to be responsible for marketing as part of their job. So we felt like we'd invested within the team, but then to kind of look at our marketing and the way we were portraying ourselves, that was where certainly the challenges started to come from, and there was certainly a misalignment between the marketing departments and the business strategy, I suppose.
Absolutely, and that's kind of why I'm more than happy. I love your examples; they're always really useful, and it's kind of it speaks to why we're doing this webinar as well, which is we've got a bit of expertise here that we can share, which is always a good thing. When it comes on to positioning, it's really not anything fancy. It's you're doing that core work all the time. You just probably call it your reputation. Positioning just takes the idea of the reputation just that step further, and it makes it a tool that you can use to grow your business. Just by way of example, there's a 24-hour local shop on my road, and they're more expensive than Tesco. But Tesco is 10 minutes further away. It closes at 8 o'clock. It means that more often than not, I'm actually kind of happy to have fewer choices and kind of spend the extra few pennies or even pounds just for the ease of access that the store represents. And I tell friends about it. It's the only shop we've got in Exeter that's open 24 hours, sort of in the centre. They're called convenience stores, and there's a reason for that. Convenience is a valid brand position. It can be the most easily accessible option. So if we're looking at Lily again with her backstory, her practice works in an industry that requires a lot of very specific knowledge. She's very much building her brand identity and making it scalable on her own personal childhood experience of those challenges that face the farmers. So, John, you should have a poll. I'm going to ask the audience a question. I'm going to challenge you. What do you think her primary positioning strategy is?
Okay, so the poll's launched. That's on screen for everybody now. So if you just want to present one of the answers, that'd be great.
Yeah, go for it. What do you reckon it is? So we've got you giving you the options of a low-cost strategy where she's going to cost less than competitors, a convenience strategy similar to that shop I was talking about where she's easier to access, or a differentiation strategy where she's providing something different, something that the competition can't provide. I'll give you a chance to answer that. Get your thinking caps on this chilly winter morning.
And I suppose whilst the poll open, I just want to say that no matter what business strategy the firm's adopting, branding still plays a very key role within each of these different strategies, because you want to portray yourself as to actually how ultimately your clients can receive the services. So branding isn't just for the firms that want to differentiate themselves. It's very much still apparent for those sort of firms that want to be convenience, or those sort of firms that are strategically choosing to be of lower cost to be able to capture that area of the market.
Absolutely. There's a backstory in everything. Maybe you've gone the low cost route because you were a business owner and you found that you were struggling to access these things. Maybe it's something you want to provide for your local community, in which case you probably do want to go for a convenience strategy. You know, I'm local, I can come and see you in your office at short notice. They're all kind of very valid ways to look at it. And there's probably 6 or 7 kind of accepted positioning strategies. So it's worth a Google if you're feeling a bit like you're not quite sure which box you sit in.
So let's go close that poll now. It seems a vast majority have gone for differentiation strategy.
We have a vast majority of people who are listening then, which is great. So yeah, Lily's firm works in a very specialist area, so providing that agricultural business advice to farmers and smallholders, which is the differentiation positioning strategy. It's quite an interesting one. We see it with firms who niche. It will usually limit the size of the market because it's so specialist. The flip side of that is that you can build a client list, which is actually kind of emotionally tied to you and your brand. They're the people that are willing to pay more and want to refer you on to their acquaintances also in the industry. Similarly, like with low cost option, if you're going for the low cost strategy, then you've kind of got the benefit there of probably a much larger client base. You can dip into a much wider pool. It does mean that you need more people to kind of make the money. And there tends to be less empathy in that space as well. It tends to be harder to get customers and clients to refer you on. On the flip side of that, you may end up with more good Google reviews and Trustpilot reviews. So, you know, there are pros and cons to every single strategy, but typically one will fit you. You'll read something and go, yeah, that's what we're doing. The goal of it all is to just highlight what makes you remarkable. So it's not kind of a unique selling point so much as what makes you remarkable. The idea being that when a business or an individual realizes they need an accountant, they're thinking of you first and you're in that pole position. Before I pass back to John, if you've got a pen and paper or a laptop in front of you, which I'm guessing you probably all do as you're on a webinar, it'd be great if you could just take a moment and jot down just a couple of words that come to mind about what makes your business remarkable. So John, I think you're going to have take this back into kind of your experience.
Sorry, I just started talking and realised I was on mute. But yes, thank you, Alex. Classic. So we touched on earlier about how your brand is how people describe you when you're not in the room, and understanding this perception is key to any brand really. You must also realise that there may be a difference between the way that you kind of perceive your brands and how your customers and prospects perceive your brands. This is something that needs addressing, as this misalignment can result in you not being able to charge the fees that you want to charge, or you're attracting the wrong type of clients. And again, this is what we mentioned earlier in regards to the positioning strategy. If you want to position yourself as a high value advisory sort of firm that's really embedded within your client's business, however you're attracting those sorts of clients that are challenging you on fees, they only want the bare compliance, then these aren't going to be sticky clients. And portraying yourself in a different, or in the way that you want to be seen, was being able to be attracting the right clients, keeping clients on for longer periods. Now, again, what we did, the first thing to do would be to undertake a little bit of research, both internally and externally. Gather key people involved in the business, and if it's just you, that's absolutely fine. But if there's other employees involved or other shareholders, get whoever you want to contribute to the project involved in the exercise, and I'd ask them how you would describe your own firm. I'd ask you to write down a description of your ideal client that you want to be working for. And I'd recommend also thinking about the firm you want to be in 5 years' time. Finally, I put your company on a branding map and think about where you would position yourself on a chart of high quality to low quality, high cost to low cost, and where you are now, and again, where you want to be. I'd also do the same exercise with your clients. I'd ask them, what's the first words that come to mind when you think of your firm? Why do they use you? What do they hope never changes about your firm? And I'll also ask them to position you. on the branding positioning map as well. We did this as part of the rebranding process for Prime, and the results were fundamental to defining the brand we were going to be going forwards. The feedback highlighted that the areas that the clients most valued, and of course that became our focus going forwards. So, for instance, we sent out this survey, and we just used a cheap Survey Monkey sort of form, or you could use Google Forms for something like this. And we asked people, how do you see the brand? How much hope it never changes? And the results that we kind of had back was so enlightening. And people said that obviously we find you really approachable, you're really innovative, you always embrace and change. The words that people then said back to us, we obviously can recognise what they valued first of all, but we're then able to portray that to the outside world, and also to our staff internally to look. This is what our clients are saying to us that they appreciate. This is what we want to try to double down on. Of course, there are always opportunities to understand the differences between perception and alignment. And identifying these differences is important to understanding what your brand is saying to people. And as I said earlier, if you want to focus on one area of the market, but you're always attracting clients that want something different, then that's something that you might want to address and have a look at. That's when you start to go into each individual marketing material item, such as a website. Look at the key messaging that is getting portrayed, and then how can we utilize what our clients have already said to us during the research project to be able to say this is the type of service that people receive from our firm. Okay, so Alex, I'm just going to come back to you for missions and values.
Yeah, absolutely. So just off the back of what John's just said, one thing is with those words that you've jotted down, hopefully you did manage to get a few thoughts down. They'd probably be a really good place to start. How much do these words actually reflect in the real world when you talk to clients? What do they think? What do friends think as well? Especially if you're sort of on the solo or sole business side, you're going to pin a lot of this on who you are. So when we're talking about your mission and values, this is where we take the reason your brand exists and kind of create a framework for the future. It's your framework for scalability if you are looking to grow and grow and grow. It's also the thing that will help you stay consistent if you really do just want to be a sole practitioner, and that's where your joy is, working for yourself and not having to worry about anything but really your clients. It's consistency and it's a framework. It's essentially how we bridge the communication gap between you knowing your brand and the world understanding your brand. It always links into your story and your position. So with Lily, we're talking about this idyllic, relatable, homegrown origin story. And I said to you earlier, well, you're probably thinking this is all very nice. This is a lovely story. But how is this a business? How does this become a business story? And it does become a bit of a challenge at this point. So how do we take Lily's identity and Lily's story and what drives her and create a brand that will still be really relevant, authentic, and believable in 10 years when she's got that, 30 strong practice? Her mission absolutely has to reference her roots. It means that the client should still feel empathy from her team, no matter kind of if their advisor truly grew up on a farm or comes from the center of a city. The values will serve to kind of underpin this. That's the part where you're going to create a code for everyone to kind of promote the same ideals that you're talking about that are driving you. Makes it a really transferable thing. We do this at Bright. We have our values that everyone from sort of onboarding new employees right up to Kevin, our CEO, we all sign up for it. It means that there's that consistency. So for Lily, we might have things like we put farmers' interests at the heart of our actions. We guide farmers towards a better financial future, and we advocate for farmers in the financial world. And you'll see all of those kind of serve to underpin that first one, that the farmers' interests are at the heart of everything they do as a practice. You could also capture this into a single phrase, which would probably be the mission. It might even serve as a tagline. It depends if you want to go that route, you don't have to. So for Lily, I'd suggest something like farm-friendly agricultural financial advice. It just lets prospective clients know that the business is there for them and why it's doing it. John, have you got anything on mission that you wanted to chat through?
Well, I suppose I also just want to touch on values, what you just talking about, and what I was thinking about. We obviously recently been going through a rebranding process at Bright as well, and during that process, we've articulated what our brand values are and the way that we want to deliver our solutions to our users. And I was talking to somebody who's been with the business for over 10 years, and they were talking about the differences between the organisation that we are today to what it was 10 years ago. And now kind of saying, 10 years ago it was a much smaller team, and now we're about over 300 members of staff. And I was saying, well, this is why we need brand values, because when you're a much smaller firm, it's very easy just to be able to try to portray the company culture, to portray the brand values that you want to deliver to everybody, because you get that sort of one-on-one contact. But actually, by taking the time to write down the brand values, it's something that everybody can conform to. That we're able to kind of sit people down and say, look, this is who we are. This is the way we want to deliver services or solutions to users or clients, and this is what we expect. And I suppose that this is something that we did at Prime, and I was always really proud of the brand values, because I thought it was an excellent way of articulating what made Prime Prime. We had them printed out. We put them on a training wall within the office, and it was also the place where we also did potential client meetings. It meant that we were able to kind of tell the team, look, this is what we expect from you, from being part of our organisation, and also this is what is different from us to our competitors. We can't speak to what competitors do, but we can be confident in what we're doing, and this is what we expect you to do. The brand values, then, they were really embraced. As I say, it had an impact on almost every area of the business, and an example of that would be staff appraisals. So during the appraisal process, staff had to demonstrate how they conducted themselves in accordance to the brand values. It became a useful tool in recruitment as well, because so everything's on the walls in the training room. We were able to say to potential staff, this is what we expect of you, and if this is not the way that you want to conduct yourself, then maybe this isn't the organisation for you. But if it is, come and join us for the journey. And of course, with potential client meetings, the brand values would always be discussed, because they're front and centre. We were able to articulate, okay, this is who we are. This is what you should expect from signing up to our firm. And although I appreciate that everyone explained that they want to work with clients closely, they want to be approachable, but having it so clearly visible and front and centre to clients, it had that impact that actually this isn't just something that's one director is saying to me during potential client meeting. This is something that this firm really believes in. This is something that's everybody in the firm embraces. Obviously, that's Alex, you also talked on mission statement. We also drafted the mission statement at the same time, and that was a nice way of kind of, I suppose, setting our stall out to what type of business we want it to be. And it's our statement of intent more than anything else to kind of say, this is what we're going to want to try to achieve as a business, and again, both internally and externally, for people to either to embrace or to not. But no one could ever say that they weren't expecting anything from that brand, because it was so clearly articulated and visible about what we wanted to try and achieve. So Alex, I think, did you want to stay on this side, or was it the next one? This one, is it?
No, back one. You've given away my big reveal now.
Sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. Everyone got a little sneak peek there. So we're talking about Lily's story, and obviously using her as a bit of a case study to basically demonstrate how we get from a story to a brand. And obviously, John, there you're talking about the mission statement, and a mission statement absolutely is a distillation, usually, of your reason. It's a quick way. You might hear it called an elevator pitch sometimes, but it's even shorter than that. So when it comes to visual identity, this is where we're building out that really fun kind of a creative bit at the top. And you'll notice that so far I've not really said much about Lily's visual identity. I haven't even given you a business name, although you may have had a sneak peek of it. So you've got your story, you've got your identity, you've got a mission, you've got values. This is where your choice of colours and your logo and even your font choice all serves to kind of set you apart from the competition. We're looking to reflect your story consistently throughout your customer experience, and visual identity is the thing that ties all that together. You know, it makes it, oh, I recognize that. That's my accountant, or I want that to be my accountant. So if we talk about Lily, we're going to introduce you to her visual identity. In that picture at the start of Lily in the kitchen, I searched a stock image library for the phrase woman working in a farmhouse kitchen. And straight away it showed me what I was expecting to see, which was these earthy brick tones, you know, wood chopping blocks. You know, she's looking very fresh and it's like gorgeous lighting. You're not thinking about modern white and steel and, you know, very professional kitchens. So, John, do you want to jump on to the next slide for me? Because this is something I've thrown
excited.
together.
I
know,
what's
no one's seen it yet. What is it going to be? It's like Christmas. It's very much something that I've hey, there she is, there's Lily, and this is Egg Accounting. So I'm introducing you now to Egg Accounting. This is something I would suggest maybe as something that could go in brochures or even on a website as an above the fold, kind of the first thing you see. When we talk about above the fold, we just mean you don't have to scroll to get to it. We're very much looking at that nest egg image. We're using the kind of earthy brown tones with a little bit of green. We've got agricultural financial advice direct from the farm as a strapline, which I've adjusted slightly since we were talking about it a couple of slides ago. And we're looking at it as like a scalable thing. So we're talking about specialist teams' knowledge of all things agriculture. We're referencing those values of better financial future with time to focus on what matters most to you. She's also referenced her family there. You know, we're here to help farmers like you and my family. So when we move into this marketing space, that direct language, the you talking to directly talking to your potential clients is going to be a really powerful thing to do, especially if you're doing something that is based very deeply in your own story. So this is Egg Accounting. We've got the nest egg, we've got the brown tones, we've got the story, and we've got Lily as the kind of front of it. But you can imagine this being relevant in 10 years' time when she does have 30 people working with her and looking after their accountants, looking after their accounting even.
And what I like about this is Lily's going to attract the sort of clients that she's going to want to work with as well, by quite clearly portraying who she is, what the firm is about, and people are going to come to that and embrace it. And hopefully she's not going to be inundated with a load of clients that she's not going to want to outside her industry or whatnot.
That's a really good point. Especially if you're looking at rebranding, if you find that you are turning away a significant handful of people that are approaching you for help, or they're saying, actually, I don't think you can help me, you're probably doing something not quite right on the branding front. I did all this in Canva, just as a note. So Canva's a great tool. The reason I'm mentioning it is a lot of people will have heard of Canva, and there are some questions around the legalities of using Canva for like kind of official copyrighted imagery, especially logos. So just as a heads up, if you're going the Canva route, have a little Google just to make sure that you're kind of in the clear, especially for logos, because there was some bits in the news a little while ago about, using copyrighted stuff outside of the license that Canva provides. It's just a heads up on that one, really.
So I suppose it's pertinent as well, just to kind of share, I suppose, what Bright's done with its rebranding and what Prime did with its rebranding. So there's two approaches that you can take. We employed a branding agency in both scenarios. So Bright has employed a branding agency, and so did Prime when we was in practice. And I suppose the reason that Prime decided to do it is because we hadn't been through the process before. We didn't have any sort of guidance on how it was going to go. I'm hopeful that after today's session, you might be able to think, okay, so let's start with a client survey and let's get them to kind of articulate to us how they perceive us. If you take anything away from today's webinar, I would really encourage you to do a client survey. And it's always my number one piece of advice, and just send out an anonymous survey asking people how they perceive your brands, and I think you'd be really informed as to their perception of you and your services. The branding agency, obviously, what their benefit is that they've also got like graphic designers in-house, as well as they'll be able to take all the the data and all the insights to be able to then to formulate, you know, a new look and feel for the brand and for the logo and whatnot. But obviously there's a cost involved in that. If you wanted to do a rebranding project, but you wanted to try and keep the cost down, then I'd recommend doing all the survey elements yourself, and then you could give a much more comprehensive brief to, you know, that independent graphic designer that you might find online. Like people per hour is absolutely great for people like that. So what I would say is that you might want to just do a little bit of more market research in regards to what local competitors are positioning themselves. Like, you'd hate to do all this research and kind of like land on a design, a look and a feel, and then realise, oh, it's very similar to somebody else. And yeah, and even I've seen accountants adopt similar branding to other businesses, even outside the industry. And yeah, so you might want to just do a bit of market research, a bit of desk research to be able to think about that going forwards. And again, Bright has also worked with an external agency just to be able to kind of take us through that branding process. The research elements we've kind of done a lot of ourselves, because we want to try and get that insight back from our users and be a little bit more engaged with them as well. So the other thing about, I suppose, sorry, I'm going off on one now, about an agency is the range of marketing material that you could probably get them to do. At the same time as asking them to also do a new brand for us, they also redesign business cards, letterheads, the website, an advert, for instance. Any one piece of marketing material that we thought we might need, they kind of did all in one swoop. Which is obviously what you get when you pay that, I suppose, a little bit extra for. Okay, Alex, I think sorry, I've got waffled on. I think this one of yours was already put.
You were so excited.
Sorry.
It's all good information. It's all good information. I think the thing here is, you know, when we look at that mountain, we've actually kind of skipped the taking your brand to the world bit, which I think we're going to touch on. But the reason that we've not gone into a lot of detail around kind of how to get this out in the world is because we could do 3 hours on this, you know, and we could do a series of these. This is so much that you can do. There are loads of online guides as well. I know HubSpot's definitely got an excellent kind of downloadable guide to doing this. So if it is something you want to take away and kind of dig a bit more into, this is my entire job, is looking at this stuff and making sure that we're seeing right. So distilling that into, you know, 45, 50 minutes is a little bit of a challenge. But any of the eagle-eyed of you may have noticed that we skipped that middle bit. We're going to touch on it now, which is the being seen. This is how you take your brand to the world. The reason it's kind of the second tier up on the mountain analogy is because it's a really good way, especially with social media and your website, to kind of test it out before you go and commit to expensive redesign fees and things like that. So certainly social media, it's low cost, it's effective. You know, you could create a profile and delete it in a week if you feel like it's actually not kind of landing. It's also a really good way to talk personally about what drives you, talk about your successes, talk about clients who have had successes off the back of what you've been doing with them. The website is obviously a little bit more, but you can get started pretty quickly on things like WordPress. Again, if you're wanting to test out, is this going to work for me? There's nothing wrong with taking a free website for a little bit before you go spending a lot of money or contracting people to do a kind of professional job on it rather than a hobbyist job. I've done this kind of privately with a couple of friends who have started businesses where we've just kind of set up like a shopfront website just to test it out and see how well it resonates. And there's always learning. You know, there's one of them where we actually went back to the drawing board because what they thought they wanted to put out in the world actually wasn't quite as effective as recalibrating. At the start, I said keep an open mind. That's what I'm talking about. There's also the option for like local national media, being seen at events. You know, if you're really committed, part of my job as a brand manager is to get Bright mentioned or get articles placed in things like The Accountant online or Taxation magazine, or even national media, getting quoted in national media, that kind of thing. So although we've kind of only vaguely touched on this, this is important. It's that thing of, you know, John and I were chatting through yesterday what we were going to talk about, and we were both very much in agreement that we could do 3 or 4 hours on this and, you know, really dig into it. This is the summary version, I guess.
What I would say about social media, so managing expectations in regards to what we're going to get from social media. I think sometimes people think they're going to get a lot of inquiries on social media. In my experience, that's not the reality. But that's not to say that social media doesn't play an absolutely integral role to your business. Because what I believe happens is a lot of people will either hear about you from a friend or see you online, and then they'll probably go to your social media just to get that extra reassurance before they're making contact. And I was just doing a little bit of research into some of your firms, to be honest with you. I was looking down the attendee list for those of you who are registered and starting to have a look at your websites. And the first thing I do is have a look at the website. Personally, I like to go to an About Us page, because ultimately people buy from people and they want to know, you know, the people behind the organisation. And then there was a link to an Instagram for the one firm in particular I was looking at. Go on Instagram to start have a look at, oh, okay, let's try and, you know, learn a little bit more about the people behind the business, because that's what people want to know. And I think sometimes the people element is sometimes forgotten, and instead we tell people about the services that we're going to be delivering. So I think socials is a huge one. And Alex, in regards to building the websites, there are lots of different great options for people to be able to build their own sites. I used Squarespace to build a couple of websites, which worked absolutely fantastically for us. Not for primary, that was built externally, but in other businesses that I've been involved in.
Yeah, certainly if you're testing it out, like a shopfront website, 2 or 3 pages, you know, one about what you do, one about who you are, and possibly one about fees if that's the route that you want to go. It's a great way to test it out at, you know, relatively low cost or even free. Without getting too much into it, there's the marketing rule of 7, which actually comes from the early days of cinema, where they did some research and discovered that it took a viewer 7 exposures to a movie to actually want to go and see it. That's been transferred into marketing, and that's where social media comes in handy. You're probably not going to see a lot of inquiries directly through social media, but don't underestimate the kind of impact it has on the whole, because if you're expecting people to see you 7 times before they get in touch, that's the point at which they know who you are. And social media, especially if they're following you, is a huge part of demonstrating who you are, why they should come to you.
Absolutely. And Alex, I think it might be worth me and you doing a session on marketing at a later point. It was during the summer, Accountancy Manager did a series of webinars, one of which was on marketing. It was really well received. So perhaps we'll do another session on marketing and the different activities and the campaigns that you can implement to be able to get your messaging out there.
Sounds like a really good idea. Certainly something with Bright, and as a brand, one of our kind of guiding principles, I guess, is being as useful as possible. We're very aware that accountants don't necessarily have the most resources at their fingertips. So, you know, yes, we're here to create software that works, but actually we've got a lot of people internally who are very good at what they do. So sharing that is going to be a huge part of, you know, our role as a partner to our customers.
So just want to kind of touch on some of the key takeaways from today's session, really, just kind of to recap what we've been trying to say. Branding is absolutely your firm's personality. And when Alex is saying about how people would describe you when you're not in the room, your branding is going to be the perception that people receive when they're not meeting you, when they're doing their research, and their understanding as to what type of services they're going to receive from you. Obviously, branding, you can use it to differentiate yourself from your local competitors, and I really genuinely believe that yes, okay, so as accountants and bookkeepers, we all kind of have to deliver the same sort of services ultimately to the clients, particularly with something like year-end accounts. Like they all have to be the same by the time it's all said and done. But it's the process that's different, and I think we can. There's an opportunity to articulate the process and the client experience to both clients and prospects through our marketing, through our branding, and to be able to say, you know what, this is what it's like to be one of our clients, and that's what makes us different from those guys down the road. And by doing so, ultimately, I do think a solid brand builds brand loyalty, because you attract the right sorts of clients that are going to be happy to pay, you know, the right sort of fees you want to be charging for, and receive the services that you want to deliver as well. Alex, any closing comments from yourself?
I think we've kind of covered it, hopefully. I mean, obviously, we're going to open up to a Q&A, so anything that does come up, we can touch on. But as you say, the key takeaways there are the really important things for anyone that's looking at branding or rebranding.
Excellent. As Alex said, I'm just going to do a Q&A section in a moment. So if you do have a question that you want us to answer, please drop it into the Q&A box now. And whilst you're just thinking about that, I just wanted us to give a bit of an overview again of Bright, which is the organisation that now owns the different projects that Alex and I have kind of joined the Bright family from. So as I say, we'd love to give you the opportunity to be able to learn more about the products that we offer, and in order to be able to ascertain who would like that, I'm going to launch another poll. So I'm just going to launch that now. The poll should be in progress. If you are interested in hearing about Accountancy Manager, BrightPay, BTC or SURF, please do just click on the relevant box now, and we'd love the opportunity to be able to talk to you more about that. Obviously, all of our products are aimed at saving accountants time, to be able to optimize different internal processes, which ultimately should enable you to be able to focus more time in other areas of the practice. Perhaps branding is one of them. So yeah, we'd love to be able to talk to you about it. So it's going to give this a couple more moments for people to be able to complete, and then that should leave us with just a couple of moments just to take some questions from the audience. Conscious of time, so if you have to drop off, of course, please feel free to do so. But we'd love the opportunity to answer any questions that you may have. Cool. Okay, I think I might just close the poll now. Okay, Alex, just looking at we've got a couple minutes. Just someone's asking what's the most important element of a rebranding process. I'll take this one. I'd probably say people, and I'd focus more internally than what we are externally, because ultimately you kind of get your ducks in a row before you're able to put it out into the market. You've got to know what type of brands you want to be, the way you want to be perceived, the type of services that you want to deliver. And I suppose ultimately taking that time to kind of drill down into that sort of level of detail will best position you to be able to put yourself out to the market and say, this is who we are, and this is what we do. There's a couple more questions.
Especially if you've got
Sorry,
I was going to say, especially if you've got people on your team who you trust and kind of want to retain, engaging them in that process can really build that authenticity, especially if your story isn't like Lily's. If your story is about providing great services, then ask the people that you've got internally who provide those services what matters to them and how they do it. So that will help with the rebranding process, definitely, for those values.
Alex, somebody's asked us here, why has Bright felt the need to rebrand? It's quite a big question. We've got 1 minute left of the hour.
Oh my god!
I suppose, yeah. So I suppose the big thing is obviously because each of our products were their own independent businesses before they were brought into one Bright family, if you will. And so I think the collective needed its own brand, needed its own name, Bright, and obviously we're always very proud of the traditional roots that each of the legacy products has got, but we do want to be seen as the collective, and that's why we've again taken a new fresh approach, a clean company name of Bright, and what I believe to be an attractive branding and visual representation of the business. It's setting us up for not just who we are today, but also who we want to be in 5 and 10 years' time.
Exactly. We've got a lot of heritage within our products, and if people are interested on Accounting Web on the Bright profile, there is an article that kind of talks through linking that heritage into what Bright is today. And our story is about accountants who solve their own problems. Saw a comment on Any Answers at one point saying, well, surely accountants should come together and kind of crowdsource their own software. It's like, well, that's kind of what all the Bright products have done. Every single part of our business is made up of products that were built by numbers guys getting together with tech guys and going, we can do a better job. We need to take that through to the future. And that's where, the Bright thing comes in. I'm always a bit cautious about saying the future's bright because anyone in the UK will associate that with the old mobile phone brand Orange. But actually, that's kind of what we're going for. The future is bright.
Absolutely, love it. I think we've got quite a few of our Irish users on the call today. That I don't know if you've heard that advert before. It was quite high profile back in the day.
Apparently, it didn't run in Ireland. I checked.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Yeah, cool. Okay, well, I think that brings us to the hour. So I'm going to bring the webinar to a close. I really hope you found it informative and that we may be able to kind of give a little bit of insight into why brand's important and of course how to create with your firm. I should always say, Alex and I are here. We're approachable. So if you've got any questions in the follow-up to this webinar, feel free to reach out to us. Either on email or LinkedIn. Happy to answer any questions. I love the opportunity to talk about marketing and branding with any of our Bright users. That leaves me with nothing else to say, but thanks very much for attending today's webinar. Keep an eye out on the emails that we send out, because we've got lots of really great sessions coming up. We've got some CPD sessions that we're recently launching as well. So keep an eye out for upcoming events and watch this space. Thank you very much for your time, Alex.
Thanks, John. It's been a pleasure.
Excellent. Cheers, everybody. Bye now.